My son sued me. He took my $18 million house and the custody of my grandchildren. You'll never see the kids again, you crazy old woman. He'd laughed, his voice echoing in the sterile courtroom. Just before the judge's gavel fell. Desolate and heartbroken, I moved to my late husband Joseph's old farmhouse, a place we'd bought years ago but rarely visited. It was a quiet, forgotten corner of our lives, much like I felt at that moment. While cleaning the dusty old kitchen, my hand brushed against a loose tile behind the stove. Curiosity piqued. I pried it open to reveal a small hidden safe. My heart pounded. Joseph had always been a man of secrets, but this was different. The combination, I instinctively knew, had to be my birth date. With trembling fingers I entered the numbers. The latch clicked open, revealing not jewels or cash, but a thick stack of documents and a letter. The letter began, "If you're reading this, it's time for the truth. But let me tell you from the beginning how I got to this moment that changed everything forever. My name is Judith. I am 67 years old. And until 3 months ago, I believed I had a family that loved me. My husband, Joseph, had died 2 years prior from a sudden heart attack, leaving me a magnificent mansion valued at $18 million and several prosperous businesses. I thought my son, Mark, a successful 42-year-old lawyer, would be my support in my old age. How terribly wrong I was. It all started one October afternoon when Mark arrived home with his wife Vanessa and my beloved 8-year-old twins, Wisps and Sophie. I was living happily, caring for my grandchildren while their parents worked, cooking their favorite meals, taking them to the park. My life revolved around their laughter and innocent questions. "Mom, we need to talk," Mark said, his voice unusually serious, sending a chill down my spine. Vanessa stood by his side, wearing that red dress that always seemed too bold for her, her expression unreadable. "What is it, son?" "Is something wrong?" I asked, pouring coffee in my favorite sunroom, the very spot where Joseph and I had spent countless afternoons talking about our dreams. "We've been watching you, Mom. Lately you've been acting very strangely. Forget things. You repeat conversations. You leave the gas on." I froze. It was true that sometimes I forgot where I left my keys or repeated a story. But that happens to anyone my age. It didn't mean I was crazy. "Mark, they're just normal little memory lapses. Your father had them at my age too," I replied, trying to stay calm. But Vanessa leaned forward, her calculating eyes fixed on me, making me nervous. "Judith, yesterday you gave the children ice cream for breakfast. The day before, you forgot to pick them up from school. The principal had to call us." That wasn't true. I would never forget my grandchildren. But before I could defend myself, Mark dropped the bomb that would destroy my world. "Mom, we've consulted with several doctors. We believe you have the early stages of Alzheimer's. This house is too big for you, and the children, well, they can't be in danger." The words hit me like daggers. Alzheimer's. Danger. What was my own son talking about? "I don't understand, Mark. I feel perfectly fine. I've taken care of the children since they were born. I would never harm them." Vanessa and Mark exchanged a look that broke my soul. It was the look of two people who had already made a decision without consulting me. "That's why we've decided it's best for you to move into a specialized care facility. We'll sell the house to pay for your care, Rex, and the children will stay with us permanently." My world came crashing down. My house, the one Joseph and I built with so much love. The one that held 40 years of memories. Sell it and be separated from Leo and Sophie forever? "No, Mark, this is my house. And those are my grandchildren too. I'm not going anywhere." But my son was no longer the loving child I raised. His eyes hardened in a way that scared me. "Mom, you can either cooperate or we can do this the legal way. You decide." That threat was the beginning of the end. In the following weeks, Mark hired doctors who confirmed his false diagnosis, presented testimony from neighbors who supposedly saw me behaving strangely, and took everything from me. The day of the trial was the most humiliating day of my life. Sitting in that cold room, listening to my own son describe me as a demented and dangerous old woman, I felt my heart shatter into pieces. The competency hearing arrived like a nightmare from which I couldn't wake. I sat in that cold courtroom, watching my own son destroy my reputation, word by word. Mark wore his best black suit, the one I'd given him for his birthday last year. The irony. Vanessa was in the gallery, wearing a gold dress that shimmered under the fluorescent lights, as if this were a celebration instead of my own living funeral. "Your Honor," Mark began with that professional voice that used to make me so proud. "My mother, Judith, is showing clear signs of advanced cognitive decline. She can no longer live alone in that $18 million mansion without posing a danger to herself and to my children." Tears began to roll down my cheeks. How could he be saying these things about me? I, who had raised him after Joseph worked 18-hour days to build our empire. I, who had stayed up all night nursing his fevers. Who had sold my jewelry to pay for his university education. I present to this court the testimony of Dr. Miller, a specialist neurologist who evaluated my mother last week. An older man rose from the stand. I had never even met him. Yet there he was, deciding my future with words I never thought I'd hear about myself. After a thorough evaluation, the doctor said in a monotone voice, Mrs. Herrera presents symptoms consistent with early-onset dementia, frequent memory loss, temporal disorientation, and episodes of confusion that could jeopardize her safety and that of any minors under her care. That's a lie, I shouted, jumping up from my seat. I've never been with that doctor's in my life. The judge banged his gavel. Ma'am, maintain your composure or I will have to ask you to leave the courtroom. My lawyer, an inexperienced young man who had cost me $5.00 because I had no more money after Mark froze my accounts, gently took my arm. Mrs. Herrera, please sit down. This isn't helping you. But how could I stay calm while listening to lie after lie? Mark continued presenting evidence of my supposed dementia. Testimonies from neighbors who claimed they'd seen me talking to myself in the garden. The truth was, I talked to Joseph, visiting his memory while I watered the flowers he had loved so much. Your Honor, Mark said, pulling out a thick folder. I also present photographs of my mother's house. As you can see, there are clear signs of neglect and disorder that confirm her inability to maintain a safe home. The photographs were passed from hand to hand. I recognized my kitchen, but it looked dirty, messy, as if someone had deliberately trashed it. My living room was filled with stacks of old newspapers. My bedroom had clothes thrown everywhere. Those photos are doctored, I whispered to my lawyer. My house never looks like that, but no one was listening. Mark had orchestrated everything perfectly. Then came the worst part. Mark approached the stand and with fake tears in his eyes that turned my stomach, began his final performance. Your Honor, it pains me deeply to be here today. I love my mother, but my children, Leo and Sophie, deserve to grow up in a safe environment. Last month, my mother forgot to pick them up from school. They were found alone at 7 p.m, crying because they thought we had abandoned them. Liar, I screamed again. I would never do that to my grandchildren. But Mark continued his act. Last week, she gave them adult medication, thinking they were vitamins. We had to take them to the hospital to have their stomachs pumped. Every word was like a knife in my chest. My own son inventing terrible stories about me to get his hands on my inheritance. Vanessa also testified with that sweet false voice she used at family gatherings. Judith has always been a bit eccentric, but lately, it's gotten worse. We just want what's best for her and the children. The judge, swayed by the carefully constructed narrative, ruled against me. My house, my businesses, my grandchildren, all were taken. Mark was appointed my legal guardian, with full control over my assets. You'll never see the kids again, you crazy old woman, Mark had sneered, his face devoid of any warmth, as I was escorted from the courtroom. Vanessa, her smile triumphant, gave me a cold, knowing look. I was utterly broken. Back in the farmhouse, the letter from Joseph felt like a lifeline. I continued reading, my hands shaking. My dearest Judith, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you, and you are in a difficult situation. I have known for a long time what Vanessa is truly like. She is a cunning, manipulative woman who married Mark for his inheritance. I suspected her from the moment she entered our lives. I saw the way she looked at our assets, the way she subtly poisoned Mark's mind against you. My husband had known. He had seen it all. I tried to warn Mark, but he was blinded by her charm. So, I began to investigate. I hired private detectives, installed hidden cameras, and recorded every suspicious conversation. I knew I couldn't tell you, my love. You would have confronted them, and Vanessa would have found a way to escape. I had to gather irrefutable evidence, enough to protect you even after my death. Joseph's foresight was astounding. He detailed how Vanessa had slowly isolated me, how she had manipulated Mark into believing I was losing my mind. He described how she had orchestrated the stage photos of my messy house, how she had bribed the doctors and neighbors. He even included a small, encrypted voice recorder. The last recording, my love, is the most crucial. It contains Vanessa's full confession. I turned it on with trembling hands and heard Vanessa's voice speaking to someone on the phone. Yes, we're almost done with the old woman. The hearing is next week. Once Mark has control of everything, we'll start phase 2. The medication you got me will work perfectly. A heart attack during the stress of managing his crazy mother's estate will look completely natural. The voice was unmistakably Vanessa's. Cold and calculating, talking about my son's death as if she were planning a vacation. More recordings followed. Vanessa laughing as she described how she had been drugging me during family dinners. Vanessa talking to the corrupt doctor about which symptoms he should mention in his testimony. Vanessa planning how she would spend the millions once Mark was dead. The last document you'll find, my love, is a letter addressed to the FBI. I have compiled all the evidence against Vanessa for fraud, attempted murder, and conspiracy. The letter is ready to be sent. It just needs your signature and the date. I found the letter. It was addressed to the FBI office in the state capital, meticulously detailing all of Vanessa's crimes with attached evidence. I have also prepared a legal strategy to reverse the court's decision. I have contacts in the judicial system who owe me favors. With this evidence, you will not only regain your freedom and your assets, but Vanessa will go to prison for the rest of her life. My mind began to process everything slowly. Joseph had not only discovered Vanessa's plans, he had prepared a complete counteroffensive. He had protected our true fortune, gathered incriminating evidence, and given me all the tools necessary to destroy the woman who had destroyed my life. But there is something else, my love. Something about the children you need to know. What else could there be about Leo and Sophie? Vanessa is not the twins' biological mother. I stopped completely. How could she not be their biological mother? I had been at the birth. I had seen my grandchildren being born. The twins are the children of Vanessa's younger sister, a 16-year-old girl who died in a car accident shortly after giving birth. Vanessa adopted the babies and passed them off as her own to get more sympathy from Mark and from us. I remembered when Vanessa arrived with the newborn babies. She had said the delivery was difficult, that she'd had complications. That's why she looked so haggard. But now I understood she was mourning her sister, not recovering from childbirth. Leo and Sophie's real grandparents live in another city. They are humble people whom Vanessa pushed away with lies, claiming they were dangerous drug addicts. They have been searching for their grandchildren for years. Did that mean there was another family that loved my grandchildren as much as I did? That Vanessa had not only stolen from me, but from them too? Judith, you hold in your hands the power to save Mark, to get the children back, and to get justice for all the harm Vanessa has caused. But you also have the opportunity for something greater. To reunite those children with their true family. The letter ended with a few lines that made me cry as I hadn't cried in years. My love, I know you feel betrayed and destroyed. But I want you to know that all of this has a reason. Vanessa chose the wrong family to swindle. She chose a strong, intelligent, and brave woman who will not give up without a fight. You now have everything you need to win this war. Use it wisely. I love you forever, Joseph. I sat in that kitchen for hours, reading and rereading every document, listening to every recording over and over. The magnitude of Vanessa's betrayal was overwhelming, but so was Joseph's meticulous preparation to protect me. My husband had been one step ahead the entire time. While Vanessa thought she was executing the perfect crime, Joseph had been documenting her every move, every lie, every diabolical plan. But what struck me most was the realization that Joseph had died knowing all of this. He had lived the last years of his life, burdened with the knowledge that the woman we considered our daughter-in-law was planning to destroy our entire family. Why didn't you tell me when you were alive? I asked his photo that I carried in my wallet. We could have faced this together. But deep down, I knew the answer. Joseph knew me better than anyone. He knew I would have never believed something so terrible about Vanessa without overwhelming evidence. I would have tried to confront her, to talk to Mark, to resolve things amicably, and that would have given Vanessa the chance to change her plans, to erase the evidence, to disappear with the children. Now I understood why Joseph had been so insistent that we install security systems in the house. Why he had started keeping copies of all important documents in different places. Why he had insisted I learn to manage our finances independently. He knew that one day I would be facing this battle alone. I picked up the recorder and listened again to Vanessa's conversations. Her cold voice planning Mark's death filled me with a rage I didn't know I could feel. Once the old fool dies from a heart attack, Vanessa said, laughing. Mark will be so stressed managing the crazy lady's estate that it will be easy to trigger his cardiac problems. The doctors will say it was genetic, inevitable. In another recording, she talked about the children. The twins are perfect for generating pity. Poor little orphans who need stability. No one will question me keeping all the money to take care of them, and when they come of age, well, accidents happen. She was planning to harm Leo and Sophie too. The woman's evil had no limits, but there was one recording that particularly chilled me to the bone. Vanessa was talking to a man, her voice laced with venom. I've done this before. My first husband, he had a weak heart. A little stress, a few pills, and poof, natural causes. No one ever suspected a thing. She was a serial killer. My blood ran cold. Armed with Joseph's meticulously gathered evidence, I contacted a new lawyer, a sharp, experienced woman named Sarah. She was appalled by my story and immediately saw the strength of the evidence. We filed an emergency motion to reopen my case, presenting the new findings to a stunned judge. Mark was summoned, and when he saw the recordings, his face drained of color. The son I knew, the one I had raised, reappeared for a moment, replaced by a man consumed by guilt and horror. The courtroom was packed when the new hearing began. Mark, looking utterly devastated, sat beside me, his hand clutching mine. Vanessa, still oblivious to the full extent of Joseph's plan, walked in with a smug smile, believing she had already won. But her smile vanished when Sarah began to play the recordings. Vanessa's cold, calculating voice filled the room, detailing her plans to drug me, to manipulate Mark, and even to cause Mark's natural death. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder with each incriminating word. Vanessa's face contorted in disbelief, then rage. "Those are fakes," she shrieked, but the judge silenced her. Then Sarah presented the evidence of the twins' true parentage. The documents Joseph had meticulously collected, proving Vanessa was not their biological mother, and had kept them from their true grandparents. The revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Mark looked at Vanessa, his eyes filled with betrayal and disgust. "Vanessa Miller," I said, my voice clear and strong, addressing her directly for the first time since my humiliation. "You thought you had won. You thought you could destroy my family for greed. You tried to take my home, my fortune, my grandchildren, and even my life." Vanessa tried to interrupt me, but the judge silenced her. "But you made a fatal mistake. You underestimated the power of true love. Joseph loved me so much that he protected me even after his death. Mark loves me so much that he is destroyed by the guilt of having believed you. And those children you tried to take from me love me so much that they never stopped asking for their grandma." Tears began to roll down Vanessa's cheeks, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage at having been discovered. "And now," I continued, pulling the last document Joseph had left in the safe from my bag, "I want you to hear this." I handed the paper to the prosecutor. It was a full confession that Joseph had recorded from Vanessa, where she admitted to killing her previous husbands and detailed exactly how she planned to kill Mark and me. When the recording began to play in the courtroom, Vanessa completely collapsed. Her cold, calculating voice filled the room. "The idiots have to suspect a thing when they die of heart attacks. It's the perfect crime. And when Mark dies, I'll have almost $30 million and 2 kids to make everyone feel sorry for me for the rest of my life." The room erupted in horrified murmurs. Even the judge seemed shocked by the coldness of her words. "That recording is illegal," Vanessa shouted. "Joseph Herrera had no right to record me without my consent, ma'am," the judge replied in a stern voice. "When you were on private property planning murders, you forfeited any expectation of privacy." Vanessa's defense attorney, who had been fighting an impossible battle from the start, finally gave up. "Your Honor, my client wishes to change her plea to guilty on all charges." But Vanessa jumped up furiously. "No, I'm not pleading guilty to anything. That family owes me everything. Mark was a loser before he met me. The children were orphans nobody wanted, and the old woman was just wasting a fortune." Her words sealed her fate. At that moment, the entire courtroom could see Vanessa's true psychopathic nature. There was no repentance, no remorse, only rage at being caught. The judge didn't need to deliberate for long. "Vanessa Miller, this court finds you guilty of aggravated fraud, first-degree attempted murder, forgery, kidnapping, and criminal conspiracies. I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." The gavel fell with a sound that was like music to my ears. Vanessa was dragged from the courtroom, screaming threats. "This isn't over. You'll all pay, especially you, Judith." But her screams faded into the distance as I stood there victorious, surrounded by my true family. Mark hugged me, crying, "Mom, I can never forgive myself for putting you in danger." "Mark," I whispered in his ear, "you didn't put me in danger. You saved me. If you hadn't married her, if we hadn't lived through all this, we would have never discovered that Joseph had left us an even greater fortune. We would have never met David and Linda, Leo and Sophie's true grandparents, and we would have never learned to truly value what we have." The following months were a time of total reconstruction. Mark went back to practicing law, but now he specialized in helping victims of family fraud. David and Linda became the grandparents the twins had lost, and I became a stronger woman than I had ever been. With the full fortune Joseph had left me, I established a foundation to help elderly victims of family abuse. The Joseph Herrera Foundation, I called it, so that no family will ever again be destroyed by greed. Leo and Sophie grew up surrounded by true love, knowing the story of their biological mother. Proud to have 4 grandparents who adored them, and understanding that real love has nothing to do with blood, but with the heart. One afternoon, 5 years after the trial, I was in my garden watching the grandchildren play when Mark approached with a smile. "Mom, do you know what day it is today? The anniversary of something good, I hope." "It's exactly 5 years since Vanessa was sentenced to life in prison." I was silent for a moment, thinking about all we had been through. "You know what, Mark? I had almost forgotten. That woman is no longer a part of our lives." And it was true. Vanessa had become a shadow of the past while we had built a future full of light. That night, before going to sleep, I picked up the photo of Joseph that I always keep on the side table my phone. "Thank you, my love," I whispered. "Thank you for protecting me, for teaching me that true love transcends even death, and for reminding me to never underestimate my own strength. Never underestimate the silence of a humiliated woman, because one day she may rise up stronger than anyone ever imagined."